Well, let's start with a correction of a correction. I said that that was Wordsworth, not Coleridge. I meant it was not Shelley. I had said that I'd given Shelley credit for that line, "Lone, wandered lonely as a cloud." Lint on my hat. Now, I took it off. But you know, when I was talking about, oh, would some power the gift give us to see ourselves as others see us, Robert Burns, and there was a louse crawling on the brim of a hat. Little did I know that there was a piece of lint up here on my hat, and I couldn't see it until I saw the video over again. That would be an example of irony. That was ironic. The viewer knew something that I did not. Adulteress, the A in the Scarlet Letter, that A stood for adulteress. She was advertising to the world that she was an adulteress. That's before people wore signs on their shirts like people do all the time now. The movie Far and Away, it's about Irish immigrants coming to the United States. But I mention it because there is one scene on the deck of an ocean liner where some men catch sight of the woman's ankle that the guy's traveling with, and they stop and nudge the other guy and they check it out because, hey, you don't get to see a woman's ankle all that often. My barn swallows are happy today. Well, that's one of those instances of kind of joking about that extreme modesty expected of women in the Victorian Era. Barn swallow came right by a flyby here. Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto. You know, he was a Russian. He wrote later. I don't know if you'd call him within the Romantic era, but that is possibly the most romantic piece of music I know. The whole concerto. But if you don't want to take the time to listen, and I don't know if I've spelled it right, but you can find it. The last 5 minutes of it. Sometimes I would play that for my class to try to get them to listen. That is romanticism in music. It is so, it evokes such powerful feelings, at least for me. So I wanted to mention that. I'll come back to this in a second. James Fenimore Cooper, I couldn't believe I forgot to mention him. He was a major American romantic novelist. The Last of the Mohicans is his probably his masterpiece. But the Deerslayer is, I found it easier to read. I don't think I actually finished The Last of the Mohicans, slow reader that I am. But I did read the Deerslayer. Not realistic, but given that it was set in on the American frontier, right here really, and the state to the north here, New York State, upper New York State, this was the edge of wilderness. For people in the cities, and certainly for people in England, this was such a romantic setting here. Not so much now, but maybe still to some extent. All right, Dead Poets Society. Now that, you got to be careful with that one, I think. There's a kid kills himself. There's a suicide in it, and it is so shocking the way that movie's done. But I usually would show part of it to my students, the beginning of it, because that movie is about romanticism. It's about a teacher. It's about a romantic in a Victorian world. And what a disaster that becomes. He is full of passion. He infects his students with his love of poetry. And it just does not fit that world. It's a 1950s American private school, but you don't know. At the beginning you're fooled. You think it's maybe Scotland or something because there's bagpipes. The main character is named John Keating. Well, that's thinly disguised John Keats. And we find out that he had recently been in London, at a school in London. Well, John Keats was from London. If you study that one, like I sort of did Renaissance Man, and listen to the character names, one of his students was named Pitts. Well, if you look these names up, these are famous people out of the 19th century. Anyway, what I would show the kids is the part at the beginning I don't like that carpe diem scene too much. I don't think carpe diem I think is bad advice sometimes, but I know why they put that in the movie. But I like to show the part where they were ripping pages out of a textbook and throwing it out. And I would go up through to the point where they stop him. He's walking along whistling. That's Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. He's whistling as he's going along. And then I would stop, because I would leave it up to the students then, if they chose to see the rest of it. It is not happy. And yet, it effectively shows that dark side of the Romantic movement. Not so easy to teach about as the pretty, love nature, hug trees, smell flowers. That's easier. There it was, that dark side, for sure. All right, anyway, now finally back to where we were. This is the Victorian era now, and I mentioned that I would discuss some of these feats of engineering under classics because we still value them. Canals. Well, the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, these were astounding that humans could do this. Enormous feats of engineering on a grand scale. Now, but there were also canal systems built all through England, southern France, and some of them are still used. The smaller ones really not, because trains came along then. They figured out you could put a steam engine on rails, and the train system in the United States dislocated the canals, and in most places it did. During this period, the east and west coast of the United States were linked by what's called the Transcontinental Railway. The Eiffel Tower, now that was built, I think I spelled it. It was built basically just to show that it could be done, to celebrate a new material, riveted structural steel. If it weren't painted every 7 years or so, it would rust away. They were supposed to tear it down again in 20 years, and a lot of Parisians hated it at first. But now it's become the symbol of Paris. Well, it was done to celebrate that enthusiasm, and for about 30 years or maybe 50, it was the tallest man-made structure on Earth, and it's still there. Of course, you can go to the top of it. The internal combustion engine, well, that ended up supplanting steam. I like to show kids sometimes that in a way the internal combustion engine, it's like a cannon. I can't draw, but if you'd imagine that this is a cannon, and right there's an explosion, there's a fuse, and a cannonball goes out. What they figured out they could do is fire it out, make it go back around, and fire it again. The internal combustion is like little cannons endlessly firing, but instead of letting the projectile get away, they put it on what's called a crankshaft, and I sure did a bad job of drawing this. But yes, boom, 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 boom. It's, which is simple to understand in a way, but to have the skill, the metals, to time it, to reload it, takes a lot of doing. And sometimes I like to show that just because it's a quick way to give a kid who never even thought about it an idea of what's going on inside an engine. Electric motors, in a way, I thought about trying to draw that. I don't know if I can. Electric motors, they're really like magnets chasing themselves around. You fool the magnet and you keep timing it so that it wants to pull that way, but by the time it gets there, now it wants to pull that way. Anyway, they figured out how to do that. And you think about the enormous extent that our world is filled with internal combustion engines, all the way from diesel locomotives and airplanes before jets to string trimmers or chainsaws or motorcycles or buses or cars or tractors. I mean, they're everywhere, and that's something that came out of the 19th century. Certainly, it is a classic. And electric motors, again, everywhere, just in in a car, it's full of them. I mean, they're everywhere. And electric lights, well, a little hard to imagine the world without electric lights. And true fluorescent lights came later, but... and then film. They figured out how you could make a photograph, a picture. So our earliest photographs come from roughly 1860 or so. The American Civil War was photographed, maybe 1850. And then by the end of the period, they figured out that if you put photographs one after the other fast enough, you could make it look like it was moving. And in comes the film industry. So much of this, so important to the 20th century. And there are more, I'm sure, but there's some of them. Okay, one more video today.